one of our YouTube channels or Facebook groups, Facebook pages. Hopefully we're everywhere and you can all find us. Pop along inside the comments and let us know whether you've made the journey over. It's not that far, I promise. Say hello in the comments. We've got the fantastic Lynne Rowe from the Woolnest with us. Hi, Lynne. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome.
We are so glad to have you here. Of course, it wouldn't be a summit if we didn't have you, Lynne, with your expertise and your knowledge. Because for people that don't know you, you are an amazing crochet knit designer, a book author, tech editor, and what else?
Everything else. Everything else. Everything.
Everything.
So, what are you working on at the moment, Lynne? Tell us. I know you get. I'm not sure I'm allowed to say, so I won't pressure you into saying. But I know you've got something up your sleeve.
Well, yeah, I've kind of spent the last sort of 12 years, maybe. I think I've been left like paid employment now for about 12 years. That's how long I've had my business. Well, I've had my business longer because it was part-time, but full-time it's been, actually it could be 13 years. Time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So all throughout that time I've grown my business. Just, you know, we worked together, didn't we, when we all started out designing, and then we sort of had extra little things like teaching, and then I got into tech editing and book editing, and then I was the knitting editor at Woman's Weekly for about 3 years, which was like a couple of days a week. That was like freelance work. So it was just like this business grew, you know, which I'm so was so happy about, but then kind of changed that now. So I've had to, because I want to share all of my knowledge, which is, you know, we gather so much knowledge along the way, don't we? And what I want to do now is to, first of all, help other people who want to have a knitting and crochet business, and also to help, you know, other people who already have a knitting and crochet business to grow their business and, you know, make money that they can rely on, and that is a, you know, a fully sort of reliable business that has really good income streams. So that's one side, but then the other side is I kind of want to encourage people to, you know, expand their knitting and crochet knowledge as well. So I've kind of pivoted my business from working like one-to-one and freelance and designing to now building like courses and that kind of thing to help other people.
Fantastic.
So I'm working really hard behind the scenes. It's hard work.
There's a lot that goes into it, isn't there? And I love that, Lynne. I love that anyone watching your presentation will go, hands down, this woman knows what she's talking about. Definitely. You really, really do. The technical side. So Lynne, I'm not spilling any secrets, but Lynne has been a technical editor for both Veronika and I over the years, and has worked on our patterns and has gone, Hannah, do you really mean to say this? And you know, like your attention to detail is amazing, which is the perfect thing, isn't it, for a technical editor? And that's exactly why we asked you to do this presentation, because changing sizes of like garments in themselves are petrifying for most people, aren't they? Just to make them, where do you begin? But then to alter them for your body shape, or if you're not quite in the remit or the proportions of the pattern, like where do you begin? Where do you even start? So thank you so much for laying it out really, really clearly. And we've got lots of people saying, great seminar. Absolutely love the presentation. And then Angela saying, is Lynne the Marley Bird of the UK? I think so.
I think so. I think so.
I think so.
That's a very much of an honour for you to say that. Thank you. That's made me so happy today.
And we have questions already. So when adjusting a top-down sweater by using a bigger hook, the entire piece ballooned and it was too big. Which type of construction is best for adjusting for bust without making it too large? Good question.
Yeah, it's such a tricky area, really. I mean, designing garments is actually one of the hardest things for a designer to do, as Veronika and Hannah know. Getting like the sizing, especially when both Veronika and Hannah are really good, because your patterns include like a huge range of sizes, which is amazing, but not all designers you know, at that point yet, because designing for different bodies and different body sizes is actually really hard. But as you say, when you do go up a hook size, I think I mentioned this in the presentation, what happens is, like, you're not just making the stitch wider, you're making it taller.
Yeah.
And so if it's like something like a top-down sweater, you are going to potentially end up with it being longer, like too long, and your you know, your armhole will be quite far down, and obviously that wouldn't be great, because it wouldn't be a good fit. So what you would have to do is to work out, you know, from the sort of height of your stitches and from your swatch, how many rows or rounds make an inch. Then you would measure your own sort of depth where you want your yoke to finish, so that your armhole starts in the same, you know, in the right place for you. And then you would, it is quite complicated, so I'm trying to make it as easy as possible. So once you had that measurement, that depth for your yoke, and you know how many rounds make 1 inch, you can work out how many rounds make the inches that you need. And then you would have to just make sure that any increases could fit nicely into those number of rounds. So say the increase in the pattern was, you need to increase on the yoke once every 4th round, you might have to do it once every 3rd round, so that you fit those increases into the depth that you have, so that then it doesn't end up too long.
Yeah, I think this is one of the issues I run into with one of my raglan sweaters, that actually you take edited, and I did have the email. I said, Veronika, don't you think that would be a little bit too deep? And he's like, yes, I do agree. Because you kind of want to start the pattern in the same way for all the sizes, but when you get to those larger sizes, you kind of have to, it's like writing a completely different pattern, because you have to not just start with more stitches, because like people's necks, there isn't a huge difference, you know, no one's got a neck of that size, so you kind of start with the same neck, slightly bigger, but then, like you said, then you really have to get those increases in there, because you can end up with the yoke that is kind of down by your belly button already, even before you split for the sleeves and the main body. So yeah, top down sweaters, they are great because you can try them on, but they are quite tricky from the designing point of view, and they are my nemesis, I have to say.
So I wonder then if for someone having their first go at adjusting things like this, like you say, the hook size, do you think a really simple construction actually is the way to go, rather than, you know, top down's great because it's seamless and all that kind of stuff, but there's a lot for us as even designers. A raglan is so much more complicated to write than here's a rectangle, add it to another rectangle. Actually, maybe just do that. Know your measurements and make 2 rectangles that you know are good for your front and back. And then put pins in to see where your underarm is and where's comfortable for you.
Yeah.
And then when you feel comfortable to do the raglans or whatever, then you know what depth you want it to be. I think just take it gently, I think, is what I think you ought to do.
Yeah, I think Selena did a great presentation yesterday on garments from simple rectangle. So if you wanted to go ahead and adjust by making it bigger, by changing hook size and thicker yarn, perhaps some simple constructions like Selena was talking about yesterday in her rectangle garments presentation, then put Lynne's advice into practice. With changing the hook size and the yarn, and, you know, comparing your 2 gauge swatches, the original, and then with the bigger yarn and bigger hook like Lynne was talking about. So I think, something simpler to start with when you start adjusting would be easier route to go down, definitely.
Yeah, and I loved your advice, Lynne, of you need to get the gauge right for the pattern first off. You have to get that right before you start making adjustments, because otherwise you don't know what your adjustments are going to do to that pattern, do you?
Yeah, the thing is with knitting and crochet, they're both the same really. Unless you check your gauge before you start, it could just all go wrong anyway, even if you're not intending to make any changes. It might be that because you haven't checked your gauge to begin with, that it could end up too big or too small just because you haven't checked. So it is really important to get that basic information absolutely spot on. And sometimes it might mean, because we're all different and we all crochet differently and we all hold our hook differently, it may mean that to achieve the pattern tension as given in the pattern, you might even need to adjust your hook size at that point.
And then again,
if you want to make it larger, you then have to go up to the next. I would always go just to the next hook size, like not a whole hook size, just to the next possible hook size. So if the pattern's 3.5 millimeters, if you've got a 3.75 millimeter hook, which they're not always like popular, those, or readily available, but try that before you went to a 4 millimeter hook, because just a little bit of a change in your hook size can make a big difference to a finished garment. So you have to try just like a little step at a time to get the gauge that you think will then give you that extra width that you need.
Perfect. And Carrie's asking, for each basic style, do you have a favoured technique of size adjustment? Does it matter? Does it depend?
I think, let me try and think. I don't know really. I think they're all quite fun. I mean, the one that I'm actually going to be trying very soon is the adding panels to the seams, because I've got two. They're not crochet dresses, but they are like fabric dresses, and I bought them in the sale and they were really cheap, but actually now they don't fit me anymore because of
I love this. I don't know that, but I love this story.
I was like, oh no, these dresses don't fit me. So I'm going to unpick the side seams. They're like pinafore dresses. They've got a V-neck, and so I'm going to cut the side seam open, and I'm going to crochet some granny square strips, because granny squares are so popular, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like nice bright colours, cotton, so I can wash them. And then I'm going to add that extra width into the dresses so that I can wear them and not have to give them away. But you could do that with your garments, because you can crochet the pieces as given in the pattern, and then if you just need like an extra couple of inches, you know, you could just crochet a really colourful strip then that you could add all down the side, and it would just look amazing.
So I did something similar. So for my Cynthia dress, which you tech edited for me, like rusty coloured one, it was to wear for my brother's wedding, and I was very ambitious with how much weight I would lose, and I would be, you know, and there wasn't much fudge factor in it. And it was like a week before, and I was just like, this is not going to fit. So I undid the sides, and I put a panel in for both sides, and I just mimicked for that one. I wanted it to blend in, so I just mimicked the same lace stitch that was on the whole dress, and it worked brilliantly. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that one.
And I suppose it always goes for what people are comfortable with when it goes to adjusting. If if you got the brain for maths, by all means go and try and work out your stitches and rows. If you just want easy solution, like Hannah said, just pop an extra fabric onto the side, or like Lynne just said, adjusting the dress with the granny squares. That's a great idea. That's a great way to go as well.
And Joanne's saying, I'm a plus side lady and this presentation is very helpful to me. I look forward to your courses. Awesome. Great. And Jean's asking, I think you've emailed me. I haven't replied yet. I'm so sorry. I'd like to add length to the cap sleeve of my mystical tee. Should I just add stitches to the top several rows to accomplish that? Yep, you can absolutely do that. So my mystical tee is a really good example of this, actually. It's just 2 rectangles put together and then a little cap sleeve put round in rounds. And so you can either extend the top of your rectangle to come out and give you some cap sleeves, or you can just work more rounds of the little edging. So either way works fine there. And I think that's the thing, isn't it, with patterns? Once you get the knowledge of how the construction works, then you can go, I can add that in there, can't I? And just find the logical place to add things.
Yeah, another good tip, actually, another one that I'm using at the moment, is if you've got a sweater of the same style that you are wanting to adjust and you're not quite sure, like, oh well, if I adjust the depth of this, will it actually work? You could get your favorite sweater that you love the feel of and that fits you really, really well, and measure, you know, the bits of that sweater to actually know that if you make it to that size, it will feel nice and comfortable, because your favorite sweater, you know, is the one that you always turn to. So you can measure like the depth of the armhole on it. You could measure the, you know, the width of it and the length of it. And then once you know how many stitches or rows you are making, you know, you've got a good idea then of how many more stitches you would need to achieve that width of your favorite sweater.
Brilliant. And then Colleen and then Darlene have asked a similar thing about, can you go back and forth with your crochet hooks? So a smaller and then a larger at a certain point and then back again. And yeah, Darlene's asked something really similar as well. Could you just do the larger hook for the parts that you want larger?
Yeah, you can, because often, like, we've all got different body shapes, so it's really hard as a designer to design for like every option. So what we tend to do as designers is go to the Craft Yarn Council website, where they have like standard sizing across about 9 or 10 sizes, and so that is like the base body, and then you design your garment around, you know, those shapes, those body shapes. So what you can do is, if say most garments have the same chest measurement and the hip measurement is often the same, there isn't much shaping in between. Sometimes there is, but usually it's kind of straight up at that point. So if you feel that you want to add a little bit of extra width at the like the hem area and around the tummy area, you could go up on a hook size at that point, and then, you know, come back to the regular hook size as the pattern gives for the rest of the garment. It shouldn't be visible in terms of the stitches, but I will check with a tension square first, use both hook sizes and just make sure that it's not going to be something that is going to make you think like, oh, I can actually see where the stitches are bigger and I don't like it. You know, it could be that the stitch pattern, it's a bit more obvious.
I was just going to say that. Yeah, it depends on the stitch, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because even just a half hook size sometimes makes a massive difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I recently did a gauge swatch for a new garment, and I did it a long time ago, and then apparently wrote down a size of hook, but apparently it wasn't the right size of hook. Then when I went to actually start making the thing, I was like, this is massive. This is just, and half it was in fingering weight yarn, so like it just ended up like I was going to be, why is this not working? And then I went down a hook size thinking it can't possibly be this, and I was like, yep, this is bang on. So yeah, it can make a big difference, and the actual stitches looked entirely different.
Yeah,
I said just be careful depending on what the stitch pattern is.
Yeah, I think smaller stitches would perhaps work slightly better, because with your like double crochets, the taller stitches, that they would start kind of pulling apart, and you would probably get quite visible gaps, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So if it didn't work with the stitches, if you thought, well, this is this is going to spoil the sweater because you can see like where I've changed my crochet hook.
Yeah.
What you can do is add on some extra stitches at the hem, and then gradually, you know, decrease just by working 2 stitches together at each end until you come back to the stitch count that's in the pattern, you know, if that's right for the chest area. So you can increase just like at the bottom bit, at the hem bit, just gradually come in so that when you get to the chest area, it's that'll be the right size for you, and that won't be too big then.
And I suppose a construction that's good for that then, if you get the chest to fit you but you want more space on your tummy, actually a top down is really good for that, because then you can easily increase, especially if you're going in the round. That's a really easy one, isn't it, to increase? And then decrease into your waist and back out again. yeah, that top down probably works quite nicely for that, doesn't it?
Yeah. Another area that's often a little bit problematic, used to get this quite a lot with when I was the knitting editor at Woman's Weekly. We put a pattern out, and you know, some of the readers would write in and say, well, it's going to fit me, but the sleeve is too tight, so can you tell me how I can make it fit? Or they've made it and got to one sleeve and then realized that, you know, this kind of area of the arm can sometimes not be quite wide enough. So again, you can just adjust that piece, you know, the arm pieces, again, either by going up a hook size or just adding a few more stitches as you increase, or, you know, for the arm area. So everywhere might fit apart from one little part of the pattern. So you can, you know, just focus on that little bit to change.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, and Kelly's saying, I'm plus size and I love this subject is included here. Yes, after last year, after the summit last year, we were like, we have to make sure we include that next year, because lots of people are always asking us. And then someone saying, I'm just getting into making garments for myself. I really struggle with sizing. You are not alone. Absolutely. Most people, when they're first starting, and even when they're not starting, still struggle with sizing, because it's so there's so many variables, aren't there, of the actual design, how much ease the designer has added to it, you know, whether you can meet the gauge properly, all that kind of stuff. So you are not alone. Please don't worry.
I think the starting point really, I think garment making is one of the most scary things, because one, you've got to buy a lot of yarn, haven't you? Yes. And it puts us off, because we think, well, what if I make it and it doesn't fit me properly? You know, well, I'll just go and buy one instead, because, you know, that's often like the thought process. But I would, the starting point really, to know if it's going to fit you, or to know which size to choose, is to go to look at the finished measurements. So how, you know, the size of the actual finished garment. So if you normally buy like a size 16 or 18, don't just look at that on the table, look at the actual finished size, because it can be different from designer to designer. So it's the finished size of the actual garment that you want to then think, is that going to be the right size for me? And get your jumpers out and measure those, so that you know, if I make this crochet top and that's the finished measurement across the chest, it's going to fit me across the chest. And then if you've got to make adjustments elsewhere, then you can at least like be a bit more confident that it's going to fit you at the end.
Then Janice is asking about the best and worst yarn to make garments out of, having made a toddler dress of true boot and the bodice stretched out due to the weight of the skirt portion the first time it was worn. And I think this is really important with plus sizes as well, isn't it? Because there's a lot of fabric sometimes, isn't there? And if that's heavy fabric, it will pull and stretch. So what's your advice for any reinforcements, etc.?
I think for me, I always find that garments that are made in pieces and sewn together are far better, because the seams provide like that structure. And sometimes, like when I've designed things, people are like, well, why have you cast off and then picked some stitches up? I'm just going to leave mine on the, you know, on the needle ready. I'm like, no, please don't do that, because what that does is that casting off and then, you know, picking back up again, but in this case we'd be sewing the pieces together. It holds like certainly the drapiness, as I don't know if that's a word actually, but you know what I mean, like it helps to contain like the fabric, then it kind of helps it to not just drop if it's quite heavy. You know, that I think that would be my best advice, is to have garments that are made with pieces that are sewn together and sewn on this, because imagine if you didn't, like some garments don't have like a shoulder seam, so they're just going to kind of pull, and there's nothing to stop it from
that's the most where they kind of the tension is at the worst on your shoulders, isn't it? But with the toddler dress, you could actually reinforce it at the waist, perhaps.
I was thinking like
like a belt or different types of stitches. Like I've got one dress I did top down for babies, and at the waist part I went back to a single crochet ribbing, which really pulled it in at the waist, and it kind of sits on the waist better and holds the skirt up a bit as well. So the weight of the skirt doesn't pull the top, but it kind of pulls at the waistband, which is reinforced. So that would probably be down to a different pattern, I would imagine. Not so much the fault of the yarn, but maybe the pattern needed just that extra little touch to hold the weight. Yeah,
definitely. And we've run out of time. I can't believe it.
I'm looking at the time.
Yes, I want to touch on this because Tina has said and I want to, in case anyone else is feeling this way, that this time is giving me a negative. Me and maths are not friends. Well, you are not alone in that. There are lots of people that are scared by the numbers, and that's why we have designers. That's why we do the job that we do. And now I feel like not crocheting again. But then the wonderful Michelle from Tales of Knots has said, don't say that. You need to understand the ins and outs of math. You don't need to understand the ins and outs of maths if you don't want to. And you can choose a trusted designer like these ladies and follow their instructions. You are absolutely right, Michelle. This is the thing. This is just to kind of open everyone's eyes and just let you know that there are things that you can do if you want to. This isn't like you have to do this. There are lots and lots of patterns that will work, but if you want to and feel confident enough to make those changes, then this is how to go about it. Lynn's your lady. Lynn's your woman.
People are at different stages of their crochet journey. So if this presentation wasn't quite for you because you don't want to get into that maths, that's perfectly fine. But there are people out there that really are kind of made their first sweaters and they're thinking like, okay, I want to make this really fit me well. And that was exactly the group of people that Lynne was trying to capture there with her amazing presentation. So we've run out of time. Oh my gosh.
No, we are on a minute to go.
Next presentation by the lovely Sandra from Nomad Stitches there. She's talking to us about top-down yoke. So that's another great presentation. And hop on over to her YouTube channel to watch and then come back and join us for the live Q&A after. And thank you so much, Lynne, for joining us at this summit and for your amazing presentation. Again, thank you so much. And
thank you.
Awesome. Everyone saying thank you. Yeah, thank you, Lynne.